Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dirk Sterks. I'm your moderator this morning on this APACHES conference with the title Develop Building Blocks for Future Territorial Cooperation. U hoort niets. Dan zou iemand van de techniek daar ginder de schuiven moeten openzetten. Loopt de meneer met een telefoon om? Ja, nu wel. Is this better? This is okay for you. Okay, so good morning again. My name is Dirk Sterks. I'm a former MEP, a former journalist at Flemish Public Broadcasting Company. And I'm your moderator for this conference. We're running a little bit late, so I'm not going to say much more than introduce Mr. Luc van den Brande, who is a member of the Committee of the Region, a vice president at this committee. And Mr. van den Brande, please, you take the floor to welcome us.
Dear Chair, ladies and gentlemen, it's a real pleasure to welcome you in also your house, the Committee of the Regions. I'm always pleased that Dirk Sterks is chairing a meeting because in one out of his previous lives, as he was mentioning, he was a journalist of the VRT, the Flanders Public Broadcasting Company, and as president of the board of the VRT, I see that his shadow is still in the house as well. So I'm really pleased to welcome you all, and I think that this conference of APACHES cluster project is a very important one. I was asking what is the acronym of Apache, and in the meantime I received the right content of it. And I would like to thank the organizers for all the work done, and this conference is yet another example of what we may say fruitful cooperation between European regions. And as a matter of fact, partnership and multi-level governance and what we can do together has evidently an added value. Together, you are stronger and more able to find solutions to the problems faced today by regions in Europe. And I'm also happy to see that this conference is also yet another example of how the core, the Committee of the Regions, intends to continue to offer a platform for discussion to all the regional and local authorities of the Union. That's the reason why I was saying this is also your house. As I understood, today's debate will revolve around the future of territorial cooperation in the Union, enhancing first and foremost innovation and jobs, smart, innovative, sustainable and inclusive Europe. Secondly, social cohesion, and three, green infrastructures and other solutions for current environmental challenges. Territorial cooperation, ladies and gentlemen, and cohesion have a clear economic, social and environmental dimension. It is in my view that the three are closely related and interlinked. APACHES promote the good practices. You know, we have to be careful on good practice. There was some time, someone was saying, il ne faut pas avoir la nostalgie des bonnes pratiques. But anyway, good practices are important. And it is important to manage existing public areas and developing new public areas in a better, different and innovative way. Within the strategic cluster of APACHES, as understood, more than 50 partners in Europe have joined forces to a cohesive and sustainable territorial development of Northwest Europe. The aim of the project is to demonstrate how transnational cooperation has improved the economic viability of cities, regions and communities in Northwest Europe. And by the way, I think that we also looking the next period, 2014-2020, that we have to reflect not just on administrative regions, but also to focus on functional regions. Because reality, and I give you one example, looking to this part of Europe, the triangle between Leuven, Eindhoven and Aachen has nothing to see with the administrative borders of some regions, but has to see with the reality and the innovative inspiration as well. The Union, ladies and gentlemen, will support these initiatives also in the current programming period 2014-2020. Overall, the reformed cohesion policy will make available up to €351 billion to invest in Europe's regions, cities and the real economy. And we have to notice that, in fact, cohesion policy, structural funds are together the most important investment policy of the Union. I'll give you one example. We know that research, development, innovation and so on, and the Horizon 2020 is a really important one because human capital, the human capacity is essential for the outcome and to reach the objectives. But we have to notice that in terms of budget, the part in the cohesion policy and regional policy and structural funds is more important than the budget attributed to the Horizon. So, speaking in terms of investment, we have to notice that it is quintessence. And it will be the Union's principal tool for delivering the Europe 2020 goals, creating growth and jobs, tackling climate change and energy dependence, and reducing poverty and social exclusion. And as we know, overlooking the 5 targets of the Union, that we are more or less on the way in terms of the challenge of early school leavers, but that we are not probably reaching the objective, even not in 2020, on the 3% of R&D investment. Anyway, this will be helped through targeting the European Regional Development Fund and key priorities such as transnational cooperation. No splendid isolation, but transnational cooperation. There will be also stronger result orientation and a new performance reserve in all European structural and investment funds that incentivize good projects. Efficiency in cohesion policy, rural development and the fisheries fund will also be linked to economic governance to encourage compliance of member states with the Union's recommendations under the European semester. By the way, it is also important to notice that overlooking the last periods of the cohesion policy, that when there is just a same project with the same financial means, in one place it works, in another it doesn't. For me, there can be only one interpretation. That is that there has to be also an immaterial component, the governance of projects. And for this good reason, it's important to focus on the immaterial, the governance dimension acting in projects together. Ladies and gentlemen, today several speakers and a discussion panel will elaborate further on these topics, and I hope that the conference will result in the expected outcomes. And it's also a little bit tricky that you are already thinking on outcomes even when the gathering is just starting, so it is not the right definition of democracy to ask everybody what he or she is thinking about and then in advance to notice what has to be the outcome. So I have just to urge you to be critical, to be open, to be in a real reflecting way. So namely, I think anyway that the achievement has to be profitable new partnerships and networks for future cooperation, hard evidence on jobs and growth benefits of targeted investment and projects, and thirdly, a demonstration of good practices and showcasing investment, innovations and the vital contribution of community champions. I'm really sure that your discussion will allow everybody to take home new knowledge and ideas on the importance of cooperation between regions to boost these new solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg you to apologize, but I have now to leave to go for a colloquium, a seminar organized by DG Enterprise, where we will discuss about the new industrial policy together with regions and local authorities. So I think that it fits totally with what APACHES is not just trying to do, but what you are doing in reality. Thank you for your attention, and be welcome not only today, but 365 years in the committee. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now have a video.
I'm a strong believer in networking in the sense that you can give a lot of things away, you can say for free, but we always get a lot back.
This is Lisbeth. She was born and bred in a village near Bruges. Lisbeth is very fond of the city of Bruges, but as a biologist, she's also strongly attached to country life. Lisbeth is lucky to work for the Flemish Land Agency. As a member of the Value Project, it's her job to establish green infrastructure in peri-urban Bruges. Green infrastructure in a well-designed and well-kept open space is of vital importance for cities like Bruges. It's our job, and it's an honor to contribute to this.
Une super initiative de mêler le côté jardin urbain.
C'est propre, c'est très convivial. C'est très chouette, quand il fait beau, en tout cas, c'est sympa.
C'est bien, je le disais à ma nièce, c'est un petit point de détente.
C'est un point de détente pour les personnes voilà, qui veulent se relaxer.
The mobile unit is a mobile unit that we developed to represent the power of the Veemarktskwartier and to bring that power to other areas in the world.
De mobile unit is een heel belangrijk project, omdat daar allerlei partijen samengebracht worden die normaliter te weinig eigenlijk samenwerken.
The goal of the mobile unit is to bridge the gap between two worlds, traditional business and creative industries, and to develop new innovative products.
Wat ik ga betekenen is dat ik al mijn kennis die ik vanuit Stinkvinger en vanuit Viswise heb, over te brengen naar de klanten hier en ze te ondersteunen in al hun vragen op het gebied van nieuwe technieken, grafische vormgeving, internet, augmented reality.
En mijn bijdrage aan de mobile unit is dat ik als adviseur optreed vanuit de creatieve sector. Dus ik ga samen met ondernemers die niet in de creatieve sector zitten om tafel om hun vraagstuk te beantwoorden.
The digital world, the web world, they all need a very special creativity, and that's what our entrepreneurs are good at, and that's where there's a great need for, and that's the way business needs to develop for countries.
Here we are in Weringhausen. This is the main shopping street, Lange Straße. The Wilhelmsplatz is the central marketplace that was redeveloped by CRE as a local meeting point. We meet the head of the Retailers Association We in Weringhausen, Mrs. Hasler. We in Weringhausen was supported by CRE and Mandy.
Frau Hasler, wie hat die Händlergemeinschaft denn von EU-Förderungen profitiert?
Ja, wir haben ja einiges hier im Stadtteil bewegen können. Wir haben zum Beispiel diesen Stadtteilladen gegründet mit Hilfe der EU-Mittel und mit Hilfe von Eigenmitteln sind einige Arbeitskreise angestoßen worden. Wir haben die Kümmerer bezahlen können eine Zeit lang. Also schon relativ viele Projekte, die wir angefangen haben. Stadtteiltaxi, Ausruferin und so weiter. Passiert besteht eben auch nach der Förderung noch weiter. Das hat sich durchgesetzt.
Een tijdportaal, dat is eigenlijk een raam, alleen je kijkt niet naar buiten toe, maar je kijkt naar het verleden.
Spannend hoor, een professor in de klas met iets wat op een teletijdmachine lijkt. Erin zie je een filmpje over een slaaf.
Mijn naam is Elias. De Romeinen hebben me gevangen genomen.
De leerlingen krijgen te horen dat ze hem moeten helpen door op straat naar voorwerpen te zoeken. En dat is het echt nieuwe deel van de les. Met een webcam en een computer kunnen ze samen met een begeleider een soort kaarten scannen. En op de computer verschijnt dan in 3D een voorwerp. Een kip bijvoorbeeld.
Kip mis ik nog wel het meeste van allemaal. Af en toe komt er een handelaar vanuit Mauritanië. Deze heeft dan allemaal speciaal eten bij zich. Als ik dan geluk heb, krijg ik ook een stukje kip.
In Romeinse tijd had niemand kip in Nederland. Hoe denk je dat het komt? Er zijn een paar antwoorden. Denk je dat het komt omdat ze geen kip konden vangen?
Nee.
Ja? Of ze vonden kip niet lekker?
Jawel. Nee.
Dus dat is ook fout. Er was geen kip in Nederland.
Ja, die... Nee. Ja, kan. Kip kan je niet liggend eten. Oh.
Dus?
Dit is het.
Goed zo.
Ja, ik vind het heel erg leuk dat de kinderen iets meer betrokken worden bij geschiedenis. Dat het meer gaat leven. En zeker ook dat het in de wijk helemaal speelt. Dat ze weten waar de wijk gewoon van gemaakt is. Waar het vandaan komt.
Stof? Stof? Stof, ja.
Wat vind je leuk aan deze les?
Dat we naar buiten mogen en veel mogen ontdekken. Heel leerzaam en het is leuk om buiten te doen. Het was heel leuk en gezellig.
Thank you very much. We have three speakers now who are going to talk to us about the priorities of European territorial cooperation. The first speaker is Mr. Hans Mommas from Tilburg University, where he is a professor of leisure studies. He also works for the TELOS, the Brabant Center of Sustainable Development, and he is a member of the Council of the Ministry of Housing, Spatial Planning and the Environment in the Netherlands. Mr. Mommas, you have the floor.
Is this working? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation to speak here. Although the weather outside is very good, and we're sitting inside, but it's always a bit exciting to come to Brussels. I'm here regularly, and if you want to experience Europe in its many-fold ways, in its many-fold tensionful and sort of opportunity ways, I think Brussels is the place to be. I start my presentation. The presentation will be projected on your screens. I had a pointer with me, but that's of no use. So I have to find a way to communicate my pictures with you. This, of course, is the turning tower in Malmö. And it's already for me communicating something of my major message here. The organizers have made an order of speakers. And I'm supposed to represent economic targets. And then the speakers after me are supposed to represent social and ecological targets. And my problem with that is that, you know, I'm a director of TELOS. TELOS is an Institute for Sustainable Development, and we principally work from a triple P perspective. And for us, the social and the ecological is not something of a burden for economic development, but we are very much from the opinion that the future economic development will come from social and ecological conditions or resources. So we turn that around, and I think Malmö is one of the cities in Europe which in its harbour developments and which in its sustainable development agenda also very much carries along that agenda. So you know, I think there is something there for a debate later on. So how do we see the interactions there between economic, social, and ecological values? So that's the beginning of my presentation. Please, next slide. Perhaps you were wondering about what a professor of leisure studies should be doing at a conference like this, which I can imagine. Although, you know, the leisure economy today is absolutely a vital economy. Talking about theme parks and bungalow parks and shopping, and you know, the centers of cities today are very much leisure environments. And also in that leisure economy, people are talking about sustainable development. But for me, leisure is much more. Leisure is developing contexts of play and creativity. And I think contexts of play and creativity are becoming increasingly important to negotiate with people the kind of future they want. One of the basic lines I'm going to talk about in a couple of minutes I've left here is, you know, that our culture, our new culture will be our new economy will be a cultural economy. It's a value-driven economy. And people from the theme park business already know that. They know that their customers only want a value-driven experience, only want a social and ecological responsible experience. So, you know, taking that cultural dimension, immaterial dimension, as was said before, the immaterial dimension on board is also taking account of cultural and playful environments. But I come from that perspective. I come in a very many sort of fields. You see agriculture. I've been involved in innovations in agriculture, trying to think through what kind of products people want to eat in the future, and what that implies for the way we grow products. I've been involved in heritage development. I'm still involved in heritage development. So there is an abundance of heritage. We have too much heritage in Europe. And you know, we're faced with the problem that we can't redevelop it all. So what to do with it? How can we relate cultures to heritage and try to do something with that heritage? So you know, I come from that perspective. I come in very many fields. And if you want to have some sort of a red line between all these fields, it's on the bottom of the sheet. It's, you know, I try to facilitate co-creative regional development capacities. So what we do is, we come in from the knowledge side. I'm working in the university. I'm not a consultant. I'm trying to figure out how we can involve knowledge in new co-creative, collaborative environments. And what kind of knowledge is needed there? And how can we link then the research in new ways to the knowledge needs of people in these collaborative projects. So we try to facilitate co-creative regional development capacities. And I'm speaking here from the background of CURE. I was invited by the CURE people to come over, and CURE is about culture creative industries. I'm also very much involved in culture creative industries, and I think they become vital. I think the culture creative people are the trailblazers of new futures in cities, in regions, because they're the people that in a certain sense are imagining new futures. And they're the people that in a certain sense are imagining new economies. So you have to find a way to put culture creative people up front and use them as trailblazers of new sort of futures in there. So I think yeah, the CURE program is very much about it, not just about culture creative industries. It's also about that. It's also about delivering an economy. But I think essentially in there is also this idea of culture and creativity as trailblazers of new futures, imagining new futures. Okay, so to give an example of how complicated things today are, the next slide, please. You're perhaps wondering about this one. This was projected in a discussion I had last week with people that are working in the sort of water sector in the province of Brabant in the south of the Netherlands. There were some 20, 30 people in the room, water boards, companies like, well, you know, the whole of Europe is drinking Brabant water, yeah, but they don't know it because they drink it in the form of Coca-Cola. Yeah? The Coca-Cola company is situated in the south of the Netherlands. They're bringing their extract from America, and then they mix it with Brabant water. So everybody's drinking Brabant water. So water, salt water, good quality salt water is absolutely a vital production factor in the economy of Brabant. But then there is a problem how to have a sustainable water engine, because other places are drying out. And then there is climate change, and we have sometimes too much water, and sometimes there's not enough water. So, we're in a certain sense trying to figure out how this water chain is functioning how we can get it much more sustainable. So what you see here is that we use integrated chain management or integrated chain research to come to an evaluation of the water chain, and then turn that into knowledge, which is then brought to a group of people who can use that knowledge to reorganize themselves. This is not a technological problem. There's a sustainable water circle in Brabant is not a technological problem. Yeah, there are some technological issues today. Today we can turn grey water into energy, yeah, which is the technological edge, so to speak, for it. But it's very much a problem of social organisation. The problem with the water chain in Brabant is that too many parties are doing too many different things and they don't coordinate. At least the coordination is, in a certain sense, not carried along by the market. And the way we raise taxes is not very, very supportive of the way in which the water is used. And we have private water boards and we have public water boards. And one of the boards is for the grey water and the other is for the drinking water. It's very much a social issue. So now we have a pilot project which brings all these parties together. And they're going to rethink, based on a very concrete pilot project, space-based, region-based pilot project, how to reconfigure their chain, how to reconfigure their collaboration. And Coca-Cola, companies like Coca-Cola, Fuji, and theme park business is involved there. Not because of social reasons, but because they think there is a source of profit-making in there, a new economy in there. So that's one of the examples in which the economic and the social and the ecological is coming together. Next one, please. So the theme is creative renewal. And there's nothing new as such about creative renewal. I mean, the capitalist economy is about ongoing cycles of creative renewal. Marx, all that solids melts into air. It's Karl Marx, which all so that said that in the 19th century. We know about Schumpeter, creative destruction. We have Porter, competitive advantage. So creative renewal as such, I don't think is very new. So perhaps, is this business as usual? No, it's not business as usual. Yeah, it's business as usual in the sense that, next slide, please. We're looking for jobs, yeah? It's about old economies crumbling down, and then we have to find new economic sources. We have to find new economic development path. And that's a constant, yeah? We've been ongoingly doing that. And every now and then people have been sort of forecasting that, this will be the end of the job economy. We will now have a jobless economy. And then, all of a sudden a new economy popped up and new jobs were developed and, So in a certain sense it's an ongoing process, but, next slide please. Today we have a sort of a different situation. In my perspective, and I come back to this later on because we've done some research on this in the Netherlands, in my perspective we're still grappling with this deeper structural economic change. And that's a change from the industrial economy, the old, which is still there, yeah, because the buildings are still there, and the people are still there, the laborers are still there. So we're still grappling with the legacy of that industrial economy, and then we have to find out the next economy. What's the next economy? And we're in the middle of that. We're in the middle of the digital revolution, and we're in the middle of the value-driven economy, etc. And we have a service-based economy, we have sustainable economy, and we're still searching for that new economy. And perhaps we will not find it because it will be an ongoing change. Yeah? We're already in the process. We're in a certain sense perhaps waiting for a new economy, which we then can sort of give a concept to, like the creative economy. Yeah, now we know where we are, the creative economy. But perhaps it's ongoingly. Perhaps this idea of renewal is an ongoing process, and I like that. And I like that idea. So we have to find, in a certain sense, structures which ongoingly can figure out where people are going economically. And this is based, next slide please, on this. This is bringing together a few issues, and it's perhaps a bit complicated, and perhaps you should take it home and then study it back home. But there are 4 issues here which I like to take out, and which are, I think, in a certain sense, formative structures of what the new economy is all about. It's about digitalization, information, yeah? According to Castells, I think he's right, our new economy is about information. It's not so much about physical things, it's about information, the information we use to produce things. It's not the physical element which is crucial here, it's the informational element which is crucial here. So it's an informational economy. Next, it's a network economy. It's about collaboration ongoingly. Yeah? People in the economy know that. So it's not about vertical hierarchies, it's much more about horizontal collaboration. So companies are organizing themselves very much in horizontal ways and trying to modularize themselves in accordance with that. And then third, it's value driven. I mean, the industrial economy was very much an economy of needs. Well, the economy today is very much an economy of values or desires, or you know. We had last week in the Netherlands. I don't know whether you sort of have noticed this. ING, you know ING, the bank. It had this fabulous idea to sell people's information. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. I mean, I'm not going into a bank just to sell my account to people. I didn't buy an account in a marketing company when I sort of asked ING to save my money. So now ING is taking that back because a lot of protest. We don't want that. We don't want you to use our information for your own good and not share that with us. So you know this is a value-driven economy, and I think that's very important. And last one, end users are becoming more and more important. End users are, and that's the example of ING again, end users are becoming more and more important as drivers of economic development. So we have to turn around the value chain. Yeah? And we see this all over the place. Next please. Our landscapes are changing. Yeah? We have industrial spaces which are now regenerated into something new. The culture creative industries are coming in there, using these spaces for new sort of economic perspectives. Next please. Iconic places. Yeah, we're creating new sort of culture creative environments for economies to put themselves on the map and then attract talent again and then, you know, have a thrill, you know, local buzz and global pipelines, that idea. So this is also very much about creating local buzz so people feel attached to that. Next please. And this is Strijp S, Eindhoven. Technological environment, but you know, also for Philips it's clear that you no longer can do this in an engineering kind of way. You need environments in which cultural creative people feel at home, in which they want to become attracted to. So whole quarters of our cities are redeveloped into sort of this new economic space. Next please. So yeah, there's a lot of literature about the factors behind it. And literature is going back already, you know, way back. One of the loveliest books I've been reading is Chorsky's Fin de siècle Vienna, which is about, you know, Vienna at the turn of the century, 19th century. And absolutely sort of bringing together intellectual capacities and creative capacities, music, visual arts, performing arts, architecture, but also engineering coming together in Vienna. Why Vienna? Because Vienna was open. Vienna was a meeting point of different European regions. And Vienna in the sort of Austrian Habsburg Empire was very much also multilingual. So yeah, there was an enticement, there was a sort of energy there. And you know, there's a lot of research being based on that. So you know, smart regions research, we know all the factors. And we have the factors down there: openness, tolerance, knowledge, creativity. I mean, university cities are becoming magnet pools of economic development. We know that. So if you have a university as a city, bless you. Because that's where the new economy is coming to. That's where companies are looking for innovative environments. Yeah? Agglomeration factors, critical mass, and this quadruple helix idea, collaboration. Yeah? Collaboration between governance, companies, knowledge institutes, and citizens. We need the end users as citizens also to be included in these projects. And then there is venture and risk capital, which is there for organizing capacities. And there are concepts floating around, like smart specialization, but also resilient economies. I mean, there is a danger in specialization. The danger is that you lose out in resilience. And by the way, we know that this is an ongoing process. So something of diversity has to be kept there on an economic level to be able to respond to new circumstances. So it's very much also about resilient economies. Next one, please. But for me, this is basic. Also for economic policies, it's basic to take the sustainable development perspective. Smart, sustainable, and inclusive today are related. Yeah? And even if you speak to companies, if you speak to CEOs of companies like Coca-Cola, Fuji, they know this. And I try to make money out of smart, inclusive, and so sustainability is taken out of the ecological zone, and sustainability is taken to the overall agenda. It's about triple P perspective. Next one, please. 5 minutes about this one. Piece of research we've done in the Netherlands, which is telling us this: if we don't link, you can read this back home because I'm not going to deal with all the details here. If we don't link economic development to social and ecological developments, the thing will blow up in our faces. Yeah. And if you take the next slide, I'll show you the next slide. If you take the left bottom map of the Netherlands, and you look in the center, you see that small green spot down there. This green spot is Utrecht, the city of Utrecht. And Utrecht is very much on top of all sort of socio-economic indicators. Yeah? Universities, young people, mobile, economic development, etc., etc. So now search for the same spot. Search for the same spot in the above map. Yeah? The ecological capital map. The same spot. That's the red one. Yeah? So this economic smart city is finding itself in ecologically very bad situations. Now go to the right bottom. Socio-cultural indicators. Yeah? And look at Utrecht. It's the red dot. It's a red dot. Yeah? So also socio-culturally it's going very bad for Utrecht. And you see that the city is surrounded by all kinds of green dots. And that's where the middle class lives. Yeah? So the middle classes are earning their money in the city of Utrecht and then in the evening go back home in the suburbs. So what's happening here? What's happening here? So there is substitution here of values. Yeah? So who's gaining from this economic growth? And who's losing out? So there is a challenge there to link economic agendas to social agendas. Okay, next one, please. This is what's happening. We have local elections today in the Netherlands, and there is a fear somewhere that what's happening here. There is an increasing social inequality taking place. We're still grappling with our industrial legacy. All the industry cities are doing very bad, and we have a populist reaction. So how to link that to our economic agendas? Okay. Space of places, space of flows. Next, please. And that one in a context in which the old institutions have to relate themselves to new environments. Yeah? Social media, transdisciplinary knowledge, participative democracy. It's not about throwing away the old institution. We can't, it's not about either top-down or bottom-up. No, that's too easy. That's sort of romanticizing, regional collaboration. No, we need new ways of relating top-down and bottom-up. We need new ways of relating institutional structures to local sort of collaborative energy. So how can we create structures which are enabling people to organize themselves and become involved? Next, please. Yeah, this is a attempt to figure out what's happening here. Yeah, and where this comes together. Huh? So it's technology and economics coming together with culture. It's the inside and the outside coming together. And I like very much this notion of storytelling. Storytelling as collaborative exercise. Regional development as an ongoing conversation, as a collective ongoing conversation about how to organize these things. Yes, I have to move on. So what are the critical factors? Next, please. I'm finishing here. So these are the critical factors we take out of lots of the projects we do. Yeah? And I'm very much interested in the left side of that. Yeah? Learning environments, evolutionary spaces, reflexive monitoring. How can we put knowledge into these organizations for them, in a certain sense, to become collaborative and do the things they want to do? Next, please. There are in the program as it is three in a certain sense, angles, yeah? 3 chapters or 3 lines. And I think it's useful to think about the relations between these lines. I don't think you can go for a low carbon economy without thinking through how to do social innovations. Because that low carbon economy will be a collective economy. It will be shared by end users. And the same is true for resource material. If you want to have a more efficient use of resource material, you better do it in the collective sense. So you have to infuse that with social innovation. In conclusion, last one please. So my argumentation would be very much to take the triple P perspective seriously and not just see the ecological and the social as a burden for the economic, but think through an economy which is based on social and ecological gains. We need third spaces to think through the new alliances. We have to move beyond the technology paradigm because it's very much an organizational issue. It's about social innovation. We have to sort of create new learning zones. And then I have three issues. How do we build in triple P monitoring? And I think this project could be a learning zone for that. We have to, the immaterial side, we have to include culture in one way or another. And the last one, I think Europe is very important for this. For 3 reasons. Europe is organizing a kind of transnational space, which is opening up perspectives. Europe is giving us organizational capacities for this. And Europe is also, in a certain sense, giving us the kind of environment in which we can exchange these ideas. So thank you very much, and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Momas. I now give the floor to Mr. De Bruin, who is working for the Commission for DG Regional Affairs.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Did allow me to introduce myself a little bit further. Indeed, my name is Martijn de Bruin. I work for the European Commission, Director General for Regional and Urban Policy, in a unit that deals with social inclusion and urban and territorial development. So that doesn't make me a real expert on European territorial cooperation, but actually I started my career already a few years back, and my first sort of real job was for the Interreg Secretariat Northwest Europe, Interreg 3B, a couple of years ago. So I'm actually very pleased to sort of be back where I once started. After that I worked for the Benelux Union in cross-border cooperation, then for the Flemish government, who then finally sent me as a second international expert to work for the European Commission. I live in Wallonia, work in Brussels. My nationality is Dutch. I have some relatives in Germany. My wife is French, and I've so far never had the pleasure to set a foot in the UK. So I think that makes myself quite Northwest European. What I'd like to talk to you about is one of the important changes in a new cohesion policy period, which is a stronger territorial and place-based approach. Where does it come from? I think there are 2 reasons. Primarily, territorial cohesion is now a new objective of cohesion policy. Territorial cohesion probably was there already before, a bit avant la lettre, but it is now an official objective. And at the same time, when Mr. Fabrizio Barca, next slide please, was actually reflecting on what the new cohesion policy should look like, he very much emphasized that it should be far more place-based. I think this goes very much in line on what I already heard today. Places are important. Places, taking account of places will make policy also more efficient. So what do we really understand about this? That's the next slide, please. Again, things that were said before, so I think there is a sort of line here. We should not think anymore about administrative borders, but really about specific functional territories, functional places. Where do problems and potential really occur, and try to make policy on those areas. It should also be integrated. It's not only about different sectoral options, but policy is far more efficient if it is designed in an integrated way. Another important issue is cooperation. When you do that, then you already are cooperating between different policy sectors. but it should also be multi-level and go even further than that, try to cooperate also between public and the private sector, and beyond territories and beyond borders of territories. And this all needs, of course, a sort of a solid and shared knowledge base about your territory, about your potential, and all that will no doubt not work if stakeholders are not really empowered and feel that they have a stake in making the policy a success. So these are some important elements. And next slide, please. Actually, I brought it with me, but the new regulations, it's a book like this thick, and if you really one day like to read through it, then you will see actually that many of these elements come back in the new regulations of cohesion policy. You have a common strategic framework, actually, which now sort of gives the aim of all the different funds in one sort of very concise, small annex. So what do we want with all our European investments? And each member state has partnership agreements where they also have to describe how they will use all these funds together in a complementary way. There is a code of conduct on how to involve also local and regional stakeholders in your policy making. We ask member states in their programs to have an analysis of these territorial challenges and potential. If they don't have that, then actually we will not approve these programs. There are new territorial tools. I will speak to you a little bit more about that. Also, European territorial cooperation has had a little, in absolute terms, increase, but it is even more important in relative terms, and is also now asked to really link with other developing micro-regional and sea basin strategies. There is a reinforced urban dimension, and for example there is also the grouping of territorial cooperation. And there are other aspects too. I will not really go into detail, but just to show that many of these ideas now are really included in new cohesion policy. Next slide, please. So just to tell you a little bit about this reinforced urban dimension, because I think that many aspects come together. What you can now read in the ERDF regulation is that actually a part of the European funds should be really earmarked for sustainable urban development, and there should be a delegation to urban authorities. They have to decide on what projects they want to fund. So there is also really this strong bottom-up involvement. It should all be based on integrated strategies, which are should be in a sense holistic and integrated. And it is very much focused on a functional territory. Where do the problems really occur that the city wants to solve? Is that in certain neighborhoods, or is it far more about, for example, mobility, and does it go beyond sort of the city center? It is also now clearly stated that perhaps you can consider that sort of also the cooperation aspect, that urban-rural relations should be taken into account. Actually, I had a nice picture about a fox walking in a city, but that did not made it to the final version. So please imagine it with this. The next slide, please. And one more. Yes. These are just one slide about those two tools, because I think they are really designed to put these ideas into practice, to have a more integrated approach to work together between funds in an integrated and territorial matter. So actually the first step would be to have a territorial strategy, either urban or somewhere else, that would actually need investments from different funds or from different operational programs. Next, please. And ITI is now actually a way to do that, to make sure that you can implement your strategy in an integrated way. And if you were involved in projects, you probably know that in the past that was very difficult. If you had a project with different aspects that fell under different programs. If you already had the courage to ask for money from different sources, then that you had to do that separately, and each time sort of hope that your question would be request would be answered. This time around, it's the idea that that should be made far more easier. And actually, it can also be applied in a territorial cooperation, with really the idea that territorial cooperation is not on its own, but that also link can and should be made to other programs, also to other instruments. The next tool that actually already existed on the rural development, but has now been sort of widened to be used in other funds, is community-led local development, and that is very much the more bottom-up approach, and also community-led. So it is not possible that public authorities are in a majority. It should really be a community-driven effort, which can also then fund locally designed strategies which are multi-sectoral and area-based. So, just summing up, you now have a new cohesion policy which very clearly focuses on the Europe 2020 strategy, but at the same time also has a strong urban dimension with possibilities to combine this. So, one of my last slides already is what would that mean for you, perhaps, in Northwest Europe? See, one thing is obvious, that in the whole idea of trying to work in functional areas, Northwest Europe already is a functional area. It crosses across national borders. The whole idea of these kind of areas is that there are joint challenges that cross national borders and that ask for coordinated strategic responses. So that is sort of the raison d'etre for these programs. So that already fits very well in perhaps a process that is now been perhaps broadened and more accepted. Next slide, please. And you see that a lot of these elements also come back in the regulations of European territorial cooperation. So in Article 2, it's already written that the aim is actually to achieve a higher degree of territorial integration in this area. And in Article 8, which describes what the program should address, the program also should address, as all the other programs, the territorial approach that it plans to apply. And if it plans to use CLLD, Sustainable Urban Development, integrated territorial investments, and how it plans to relate also to existing macro-regional or sea basin strategies. And in Article 10 and 11, it actually describes a little bit more in detail how these new tools can be used in ETC programs. And this is my last slide, actually. Regio Stars Award, you probably know. I just looked up the finalists for this year, and I noticed that there are already 2 projects selected to be perhaps to win the award in different categories, and 2 of them came already from the Interreg 4B Northwest Europe. So I think this shows that also in transnational cooperation there are excellent examples of very good projects that already are recognized on a European level. One is on, if I'm correct, on sustainable mobility, and the other on the bio-based economy, which are excellent themes that can be addressed on a macro-regional scale, in the scale of Northwest European program. So I would also perhaps just say that I think this is very much on the right track, and the changes that you now see in the overall cohesion policy I think would only strengthen what you are already doing. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. De Bruyn. I'll now give the floor to Mrs. Karin Zaunberger, who also works for the Commission, but for the DG Environment. She is a biologist and specialized in the link between biodiversity and climate change. You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to speak to this audience. And then I think after the why and the how, it's finally up to me to speak about the what. What specifically can nature support systems contribute towards the EU 2020 strategy? And what can cohesion policy deliver in terms of improvements in green infrastructure? But before we go to this, I think it's always nice to see the global, the overall picture. Before really talking about green infrastructure, ecosystem-based approaches, nature-based solutions, or working with nature for people, I would like to draw the global context, which I think we should always have in mind when we speak about this issue.
Your microphone.
Sorry, better? I start again. So if I say more biodiversity, less climate change, why am I saying this? If we look about the CO2 emissions, the anthropogenic CO2 emissions, what happens to them? Now, half of them, nearly half of them, are at the moment absorbed by terrestrial and marine ecosystems. I just want you to keep that in mind. So when we say more biodiversity, less climate change, that means biodiversity and ecosystem services actually are our main allies when it comes to climate change. Without that, the problem would even X times worse than it is already now. Thank you. And it also cuts the other way around. If we have less biodiversity, and you know that we have a big problem of biodiversity loss and degradation of ecosystem service, that actually means, unfortunately, a lot more heavy, disastrous climate change impacts. Not only, but just like put some pictures here at random. There's been many, many more. But if you look a bit deeper into the issues, you can see that we could not have prevented these floods and everything, but we could probably have had softened their impacts. Many issues have been aggravated, for example, landslides, etc. When you hear, a few years back, there was this landslides in Madeira, and when we hear that they have deforested the mountains and then the landslide just slipped over. So just to keep in mind, less biodiversity, more climate change impacts. I think that's very important to always have this sort of on the back burner of our minds when we speak about green infrastructure, because very often we are then asked about the exact money value of green infrastructure, and having this in mind, you see there's always a value, even if I cannot possibly not give the very exact amount of, of euros or dollars. Next slide, please. Now, green infrastructure, what is it? Last year, the Commission issued a communication on green infrastructure, and there we tried to give a kind of a definition. Green infrastructure is a strategically planned network of natural and semi-natural areas with other environmental features designed and managed to deliver a wide range of ecosystem services. The emphasis really on these multiple ecosystem services. Very often we have changed the systems around us in order to concentrate on one ecosystem service, for example, food production. Now, in green infrastructure, we really like to give the full-fledged possibility of multiple benefits which we can achieve if we invest and develop green infrastructure. So this can incorporate green spaces, or blue if you talk about aquatic systems, and other physical features in terrestrial, including coastal. We should not forget the phase between marine and terrestrial. So terrestrial, including coastal and marine areas. And when we speak about terrestrial areas, green infrastructure is presented both in rural and in urban settings. What's very important for the green infrastructure is the spatial component. And now next slide, please. Let me just draw, because here we have a lot of emphasis on the urban green infrastructure. So I just like to talk you through a bit when we speak about the values and the measurable values. It's actually quite outstanding. If you think about green rooftops and walls, now they can help us to lower the temperatures in summer and help to hold increased temperatures in winters. And this makes a very big contribution to energy efficiency. We need less heating and less cooling. And in addition, the green wall actually reduces the wind chill, and so it actually reduces the heating demand, and all those things are measurable. So it's a lower overall energy demand, and this also then contributes to lower CO2 emissions. So with the green wall, but now you may think, well, one green wall cannot deliver all this. But if we think of all the cities in the world, and if many, many more and more and more, then this is a very significant impact, which is just in many discussions not counted, because people always think, but what can one wall do? Nothing. But if you think of many, 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 multiply this by million and then calculate it, you will come to a very significant amount. And it does not only do benefit in terms of the CO2 in the atmosphere, but also very practical. I mean, it filters the dust in the city, so it contributes to better health of the citizen. Here we come to the social, as a very important social impact. And this health benefit then has another good impact on economy, because you have less costs for health, because the people are more healthy. Next slide, please. Then it also has an impact when you think about the water household. I mean, this green roof, no, please, hang on a second. the green rooftops and walls, they filter the water, and they help to also, I mean, if we have sometimes lots of rain, very heavy rain, so it can sort of buffer this a bit. So it can reduce the flood risks and can also remove the pollutants, so it will help the sewage. And actually there are examples of big cities, for example, New York. They have a green infrastructure plan, and they hope to reduce the sewer overflows by more than 12 billion gallons a year by 2030, only by implementing green infrastructure. Next slide, please. And now just a few examples of some cities in the world where they have various ways of implementing this. I probably can just click through it. Next slide, please. And so you just see that this is not only European, this is actually really worldwide movement, so to speak. Next slide, please. And you can see there's really, we heard in the first speaker made a big emphasis on creativity and creation. I couldn't agree more. There's so much out there what can be done and can be implemented. You can really combine economic, social, and ecological. I fully agree with that. This triple E aspect is really the key, and it's a bit hardened to see that also in the environment I work for, that we still have to fight for this. The economic part is much more blown up still. The social and the environmental one is still not on equal terms, and yet it should be, because it opens so many positive developments. Next slide, please. Now, I'd like to elaborate a little bit more on floods, in particular, as we had last year. You may remember these big floods in Germany and also in other parts of Europe, where, in a way, people now have been hit within less than 10 years by what they call the floods of a century. Now people actually start to wonder, how is this? I mean, a century flood, if I have to live through this at least once in my lifetime, please. And now we have more and more people who have to live through that twice. I really think, well, something is really not going right. And I also found out that many of these projects which have been started after the floods of 2002, I think it was 2002 or 2002, that they were just got stuck in the administration. I mean, this must not happen. Now we really have to face the increasing impacts of climate change, and this will happen. This is a reality. We can now either sit back and watch it, or we can try to really prepare for that, and prepare for it in a very smart and intelligent way, using green infrastructure and exploiting the multiple benefits. And this is strategic, long-term and integrated flood risk management. And it helps to increase the resilience of society, and it helps to increase the resilience of our environment. But it will not just happen by itself. It really needs the increased investment in this type of actions. So we believe that the natural flood management, or call it ecosystem-based adaptation, or call it green infrastructure, will become more and more important if more and more people recognize that there you have actually a whole range of benefits you can then exploit. Next slide, please. Now, when we plan something, we always are confronted with the cost, and that's a reality, of course. So cost of prevention, protection, preparedness, this is all, we talk about significant cost here, but when we observe what happens after a flood, I mean, the costs sometimes are significantly higher, and you think maybe if you would have invested before, your costs definitely would have been lower. So maybe when we speak about green infrastructure, we could no longer, let's avoid the word cost, talk about investment. This is really investment in our future. And it makes economic sense because of these multiple benefits I have mentioned already before. And we could also then, for the sake of the multiple benefits, call this type of measures, call them no-regret measures. Because whatever you do, they will provide benefits for you, for society, for the citizen. Next slide, please. Now, this is just, again, an overview on what green infrastructure can actually come, I mean, the benefits you can harvest. So it can be a recreational benefits. I mean, these nature areas then people will go to and they will resource themselves. There's a very, there's the benefits through goods and timber, for example. Then you have the benefit for mitigation and adaptation I've already mentioned. And of course, you also have the benefit from the nature conservation point of view, the space for nature. A very, when we talk up in a city context, I mean, one of these aspects which is really very important is the avoidance of the heat island effect. I mean, heat islands are very much feared when it comes to climate change because I've heard that the difference between the land outside the city and the city itself on these kind of days can be up to 12 degrees, so it's very, very significant. And I mean, if you have enough green space in all kinds of forms in your city, you can actually avoid this. And so it's a very smart way, in my opinion, to use this these three pillars in a very, maybe it's not always that innovative. I mean, this has been around for a long time, but it's certainly a very intelligent way of investing our resources. Next slide, please. Now, I would also like to point out that last year, I mentioned the green infrastructure, the communication on green infrastructure, and at the same, almost at the same time, I think a few weeks before, there was the adoption of the EU adaptation strategy, which is a communication, and it's also, it makes high emphasis on what they call ecosystem-based approaches to adaptation, and that's yet another term for green infrastructure. It's I mean, you have two different terms which have a lot of overlap, but they, I would say, they have the same rationale, which means that you work with nature for people. And the Commission, we heard about, we want to invest a lot in order to combat climate change, so there should be a lot of investment going into these ecosystem-based approaches to adaptation. Next slide, please. I think we can skip this on. I've talked about it. This is how it was approached from the environment angle. The important thing is that now there seems to be a real synergy coming together, that we should really look at these aspects in an integrated manner. Next slide, please. Now, you think where comes the funding for that? This is a bit, we've heard about it before from my colleague. There's a lot of opportunity in the regional and structural funds, which is actually one of the biggest investment funds. And there's really a great appeal that for the sake of combating climate change, for the sake of contributing to the maintenance and the restoration of biodiversity and ecosystem services, that really a significant amount of this investment will be dedicated to green infrastructure. And for the sake of gaining some time, I suggest to the chair to sweep through the next 5 slides, which I invite you to read, but I think it's just pointing out several activities on Commission level, which I think you can read them through, but we will gain a bit of time. What's next one? So I'd like to come to my conclusion that the investment in ecosystem-based approaches and green infrastructure, I would call this investing in working with nature for people. And because it's for people, it provides business and job opportunities. We've heard something about, I think the first speaker pointed it out, that the creativity also attracts people, and that's where you then can have your growth in jobs. So it contributes to the green economy and as such to the sustainable development. It contributes to maintaining and restoring healthy ecosystems, and I'd like to to remind on these first two slides I've shown how important that this is actually this ecological system, the ecological support system, this is the basis for our economy. If we, I mean, if because of climate change there will be areas on the planet which will become inhabitable, like for example you have many people living in coastal areas, if they will no longer be able to live there, they will try to move somewhere else. So we really have to try to do our utmost best in order to slow down this process and eventually bring it to a halt, so that we will not be drained by what people say runaway climate change. So the contribution to maintaining and restoring healthy ecosystem is a key in this investment for the future. If we neglect this, then we may end up in a situation where we will be simply overrun by the things which will happening. We've seen that century floods can actually happen within 10 years. We watch outside that in a way things are no longer like they used to be now. It's probably too easy to just throw this all to climate change, but still it's obvious that we live in a way in very interesting times. We live in a time of change and fast change. If it comes from, I'm a biologist, so if you think about this for natural adaptation, it's just simply a fact that the developments are too fast in order to really count on that this natural adaptation just will do everything. So we, as the human population, we really have a huge responsibility. The actions we do now, they really will, set in stone the possibilities of the next generation. They will simply no longer have the same possibilities because we are nearing a number of tipping points when it comes to the CO2 concentration in the atmosphere. So it's absolutely of utmost importance to come to grips with this issue. And we have the International Climate Negotiation who does its best in order to get to a legal agreement in order to reduce our emissions. But we, on local, territorial, city level, we can do our best in order to get CO2 out of the atmosphere, and green infrastructure is really one. It's a very, you think, oh, it's very tiny, but just think of all these many, many, many tiny allies you would have. And I said before, green infrastructure is maybe, it's not, it has been there, parks in the city, it's been there forever, but this fundamental importance, I think it's never been as crucial as it is right now. And I again refer to the first speaker, I think it can promote creativity. Sometimes there might be ideas that have been there for a very long time and they can just be boosted through investment in green infrastructure. It can also somehow valorize traditional knowledge. I think we heard about participatory democracy, where really the citizen is fully involved in the processes, and that means the traditional knowledge shall also be valorized. And something which has not been mentioned as yet, all this networking amongst people at the end, at least I do hope that this will help to build trust and really build genuine partnerships. At the moment there's a lot of distrust. We have a lot of insurances building around us because we always think badly. But I think we have the challenges at our doorstep are such that we can only manage these challenges if we build trust and partnerships. Next slide. So rounding up, I want you to, the take-home message is that this green infrastructure, ecosystem-based approaches to climate change adaptation mitigations are cost-efficient and they are ready for use. So no need for another 10-year studies. Can we, maybe, should we? No, it's really a question of investing money and doing it. It brings multiple benefits, and it is not to say that green infrastructure is the panacea, it will solve everything. By no means. It shall complement the technological approaches, because grey infrastructure alone will not be the solution either. And so the green infrastructure should be an integral part of our overall adaptation and mitigation effort. And if we do all that, I think the green infrastructure development will contribute to integration and policy coherence. Next slide now. And if some people hopefully are interested to really read a bit more on that, we have done quite a number of studies where there are examples of green infrastructure projects, also with a lot of cost-benefit analysis and quite very, very detailed. So I would really invite you to visit our website and try to get information about many good examples, also examples which did not work, just to learn what has happened already. And I had a few of brochures lying out there, but it's also available on the web. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Zaunberger. I'm going to make a small change to the program because Linda McAvan, who is a member of our panel, is not here yet. She arrives a little bit late. So I'd like to ask Mr. Lauwers to take the floor. So we change the order of his expose and we have the panel debate after that. Thank you very much. Mr. Lauwers, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation to try to explain a bit about the future of the Northwest Europe program. As you know, the Northwest Europe program is a program that funds the cluster and the 8 clustering projects for 50%. If you show the next slide, please. This is what we have basically done globally. It looks a bit like the picture you can see below with you know, the satellite picture with Europe from above in the dark. But this is about our partners, how you can see them. It looks a bit similar for Northwest Europe. So many partners, as you can see, more than 1,000 partners cooperating in our 114 projects, spending the total amount of approximately 350 million euros for the 7 years of 2007 to 2013. Perhaps next slide. It has already been mentioned a few times, but our program, and that means the projects, are part of cohesion policy. And I don't think someone mentioned it, but every year there is a survey done by the European Commission, or at least issued by the European Commission, done independently. And this survey shows that cohesion policy is delivering finally as the number of respondents that answer that they at least feel a little bit European is growing every year, and it is now at a level of something like 62%. And even in a country like the UK, 42% of the respondents answer they feel at least a little bit European. It's not instead of their national, regional or local identity, but it's on top of that. So I think that is basically the success of cohesion is and should be that people are really committed and getting the feeling that Europe delivers for them. And of course, EU 2020 has been sort of the focus of, amongst others, cohesion policy. Also for agricultural policy or fishery policy, they also have to focus to exactly the same. So you could basically consider this as a sort of a matrix of policies and aims, smart, sustainable and inclusive. I think this has been mentioned before. Next, please. Northwest Europe, the map has been shown already. I'm asked to talk a bit about how the preparation for the implementation will go, and that's mainly this year, 2014 until 2020. So I'll focus most on that. The area did not change, although, well, I'll come back to that later perhaps. The area still is the same, has the same territorial specificities. If you look at the picture that you can find downstairs, you see a huge concentration of light around the Northwest European area, if you look at the whole map of Europe. And that definitely reflects a huge activity rate in this area with all its opportunities it has, like creation of jobs, like all the opportunities we have also on leisure and on all the other matters like creative industries. I think these opportunities are very clearly seen. Although, of course, we have some peripheral areas which we also think is a challenge for our program to connect them better. Not even only physical, but in the matter of cooperation and making them more Northwest European. But of course it has the drawbacks that comes with these advantages, with these opportunities. The drawbacks of environmental concentration, of fine dust, of all these things that we know that are sort of an issue in our area. So we have these, on one hand the challenge, on the other hand the opportunities. Next slide, please. Well, this has been said, we had a long process of negotiations, much longer than last time. And we finally had an agreement in December, which did not make the preparation for the implementation in this current program period that easy. Already mentioned, we want to have Europe decided to have more concentration and more results orientation, and it was striving after simplification. I just put a little but there because I don't agree to the fact that we reached that much simplification. I think if you look at some of the regulations, it is not going to get much easier. And certainly if you look, for instance, as a little example of the challenges on the level of audits, I think they're going to double or triple even in the coming period. So I'm a bit afraid that the simplification is not going really to deliver what we all hoped for. But still, we're trying, and we'll try to, on our program level, to do anything we can to simplify life as much as possible with basically a flat rate subvention percentages for specific costs, and so we have less complex claiming and stuff like that. Next, please. So the development in parallel of the European negotiations, the member states, the 7 member states in Northwest Europe started to prepare for the new programming period, and they identified that we would concentrate on 3 thematic objectives, basically innovation as one of the core elements, basically, and the other one is about environmental challenges, and the third one is on low carbon. Well, basically, low carbon is the second one. As you can see here, that delivered 5 specific objectives for our program, which I will not read out aloud, but it's basically about innovation, greenhouse gas emissions in basically through strategies, but also through concrete products, processes and services, greenhouse gases in transport, transport systems, and the, let's say, optimal use of material and natural resources. I think these are the core 5 elements for the new program. Next, please. This boils down into 3 groups of types of actions, which you can see as examples. It's not a limitative list. It's basically types of actions you can imagine. And I think if you look at the projects that today present themselves in this conference, I think you would definitely, innovation, creative industries would still be there, but then definitely from the angle of innovation, much more than before. I would say the societal benefits of innovation would definitely also be an example. But as I said, this is not limited. Next, please. For greenhouse gases, these are the 5 types of actions mentioned. I think, well, basically it would serve, greenhouse gases, I think there's a little shift if you compare that to the current program. It's much more from adaptation, where we had a lot of projects on adaptation under the previous program and the current program, so 3B and 4B, and now it's much more on mitigation, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and things like that. Next, please. And then for the, let's say, the more resources orientated one, it's also looking at products and processes and services, and to see that they get more sustainable. I think there's a lot of connection also, I would say, with the projects that we have are discussing today. Next, please. What will change, though, is the way of cooperation. We will, and as we have done that from 3B to 4B already, we made a step forward, I would say, in the level of cooperation, of collaboration, is that we would definitely like to see projects to cooperate more closely together after some decades of cooperation in Interreg in our area. I think we are, and the member states are, entitled to demand more. And one of the things is basically that we would like to see a project like a real project. Sometimes you still see projects that basically have a set of local investment, basically sometimes even local small projects, and then they come together at a certain stage to exchange and to exchange knowledge. What I think we should go and try to deliver is more projects that also jointly decide on the local actions. Not that we wouldn't have local actions or local investments even. Investments tend to happen somewhere, so they're always local. But that decisions on these kind of matters will definitely be taken together in the project. And not saying that a specific investment in a city, I don't know, just name a cycle path or something like that, would be able that the project blocks the development of this, but it would just would be possible that the project says, okay, this cycle path changed in, I don't know what way which was originally foreseen, doesn't fit anymore in the purpose of the project and would therefore not be funded with this. And that would definitely, in my view, would mean for the local authorities to find another project example or project pilot to fit better in the project. So a bit more mature, solid project management, I would say. And it's mentioned before many times already, more result orientation. So we will see and we will ask projects to develop an own measurement of results, and that is something which goes way definitely a step beyond what we have done today, which is very much on output orientation. So in the application form and in the contract, basically there is an output specified, but it's never really clear what happens with the output. And I think this is what the level well, actually the member states want to get to be clear what the result is, what the impact is, not just of the one pilot, but if you have, for instance, piloted a green bus connection somewhere, that the rollout of this pilot would be also very visible in the project, and that you would in the end find, I don't know, 100 buses with a measurable impact on the greenhouse gas emission. So that would be something very concretely asked from projects. How do you measure this? How do you take the responsibility for this during your project implementation, and how do you report back on this? Which at this moment we try to capture through specific activities called capitalization, which is basically doing exactly the same, but after project lifetimes, see what really the result is, what's done with it. Because as I think we all are very afraid to see reports ending up in drawers, that is definitely what we don't want. What we want is to have results and to have things done with the toolboxes, with all the strategies designed. I think that's what we really look for. And obviously, we will continue to demand that communication is explaining also why Europe is participating in these kind of projects, why Europe takes an interest in these things that are very close to the citizens that are touched by your projects. So that would end basically the rollout afterwards. Still, we would like to continue on looking on opportunities rather than problems, but that is definitely something you will recognize from our program. Just a little bit on the planning. We have a draft operational program document is ready, at least the main sections of content. It is at this moment scrutinized by the ex-ante and the strategic environmental assessment auditors or consultants. There will be a public consultation opening early May, probably even 31st of March, otherwise 1st of May, not as a joke, but as a real consultation. And it will last until May, I would say, and we'll take the conclusions into account for the final versions of the OP, which we hope to hand in to the Commission in July, which in fact, just to get real concrete, means that we would have a monitoring committee somewhere early in fall, and we would hopefully finally, I would like to say, be able to launch a call for proposals at the end of 2014. Maybe if we get a bit of delay and not a quick answer of the Commission, it could be, let's say, January 2015, which means we have lost 1 year, which is a pity, but I think there are many good reasons for that, and not that this is a good excuse, but it is a fact of life. Perhaps there was one more slide, I think. There was, and perhaps I think we missed one before. I'm sorry. This one, yeah. Because there was, if you look at the operational program, the area didn't change, but we have still pending a political decision to be taken by the member states about Switzerland, because Switzerland is part of the program, and as you know, there is some sort of things happening between Europe and Switzerland. That is something the member states have to decide on. The budget is a bit more, but it's also less, because in money-wise, it's 11% more. But if you look at inflation rate, average European inflation rate, it's a bit less. It's 10% less. So in real terms, we can do 10% less, because of course the costs went up. The decision of the member states is to go probably most likely to, it's not totally decided, but most likely up to a subsidy percentage of 60%, which is in the current program 50. So it's a bit more. It means also a bit less impact on the territory, because yeah, you can do less with more with that money. But on the other hand, we have more focus, so perhaps that might counterbalance these, I would say, financial effects a bit. So I hope the impact would still be very visible, and with this concentration on the 5 specific objectives, we would be able to show what the program, which means the collectivity of the projects, has delivered for Northwest Europe. I think now you can go to my last slide, and thank you very much. So we can continue investing in opportunities, because that's what we have as a slogan. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And since my former colleague, Mrs. McCavan, has arrived, we can start with a panel debate, and I would like to ask the participants in the panel to come up here and sit here. So if I could invite Mr. Kooijman, Michael Schwarze-Rodriaan, Mathieu Simon, and Martijn de Bruin is already here. So if you could move in the room, we can put the members of the panel here. So, Michael Schwarze works for the Regionverband Ruhr. Regionverband Ruhr. Sorry? Yeah. Louder. Michael Schwarze works for Regionverband Ruhr. Linda McCavan is a member of the European Parliament for Labour, Yorkshire and Humber, and a long-time member of the Environment Committee. You have already seen Martijn de Bruin. Mathieu Simon is the boss of Purple.
Not the boss.
Well,
representative.
The representative of Purple. And Mr. Kooijman is a specialist in creative industries and works for the University of Utrecht. I would like you to present yourself and give your point of view, a short point of view, I would insist, so not more than a few minutes, and then we go for questions in the room. Mr. Schwarze, I would like you to start.
Okay. Welcome to the chair. Welcome, everybody. I'm Michael Schwarze-Rodriaan. I'm, since 2 years, the EU representative of the region Ruhr, and I'm commenting from the local and the regional level. 3 speakers, so different languages, so different approaches, and so different understandings until now. The science who's asking you should, in a very complex way. The Commission who says that's the new standard, and the Commission environment convincing that green infrastructure is necessary. I'm asked to give a statement about priorities, and I would say first, there is a great priority and a great need for integrated approach. It is not a standard. So we have a lot to do that it will come to be a standard. Second, integrated strategies and projects are good models for Europe. They transport very much the idea of social, cultural, and territorial coming together, living together, existing together, and multi-level governance is still an innovation. Even if it's in the documents now, we have a lot to do that's welcomed instead of hierarchy, instead of getting separate. Third, territorial cooperation and international exchange of experience helps in the daily work of administrative and planning and delivering work. It widens the horizon and it's welcomed by the colleagues. It is nothing extra in the sense of luxury, it's something that is helpful. Fourth, European projects of social and cultural integration send out the message of smart, intelligent, and integrated. And I think these formal European standards are the understanding on local and regional level. People want to be smart, intelligent, and innovative. Fifth, the regional development includes the cities and the local dimension. There was this reinforcement of the urban dimension just mentioned in one of the slides. There's a lot to be done that the city's dimension, the city's needs are coming up in these things. And this includes citizens, this includes citizens' organizations, this includes this community-led local development. Cooperation and networks offering new solutions, and I think this includes a cooperation between the separate, different operational programs. Interreg is a part of European Regional Development Fund, but I think in practical, in the next 7 years, we will welcome a cooperation between Interreg, EFRE, ESF, and ELA, and there's a lot to be done that the administrative bodies who are responsible to manage these programs also see a good practice, a good thing of cooperating. Green infrastructure should not only be a programmatic, well-meant wording. It should be really a strategy and a key family of projects. And this will be a turnaround in understanding the green infrastructure not only as a good value and added quality, but as a rethinking of the cities and rethinking of the word of infrastructure and combining it really with a complex green understanding. The last, for North Rhine-Westphalia, I can tell you we will not have an extra ETE, no specially announced integrated territorial investments, but we'll have an understanding that there is a holistic integration in the whole operational programs, but that comes back to the need to the administrative people that they really run these different programs in an integrated ways. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mrs. McCavan.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me to come here today. I'm very pleased with what you said about inter-regional cooperation not being a luxury. It's always very difficult. I know, I imagine, with budgets under pressure in most local public authorities in many countries, certainly in my country, when people say they're going to Brussels or they're going somewhere else to talk about something, people always say, oh, how much is that plane costing, that train ticket? We can't afford this. But from my experience over many years, actually, we can't afford not to learn. What is the point of repeating experiments in different countries when we know that one model might work, or we try something that doesn't work? And I think it's very, very important that we have cross-European dialogue. So I'm very pleased that in the new structural fund programmes, we retain the Interreg, or whatever it's called now, the different name for it, that we keep this dimension in the policies. I used to, before I was elected as a politician, I used to be involved in running cooperation programmes between coal mining regions. And a lot was learned about bringing new jobs, bringing new investment, creating jobs, creating wealth, green transformation from the cross-cultural dialogue. So it's a very, very important thing. Again, on luxuries, I've just come from a meeting about the coal industry and its future. And to be honest, it was dominated by people saying things like, oh, we can't afford this kind of green agenda. It was a luxury for the good times. And I think we have to, if you want to work on sustainability and the green agenda, you have to fight for it now, because it really is under challenge. I know tomorrow you're meeting the head of cabinet, Commissioner Hedegaard, the Commissioner for Climate Change, who has really been under siege, if you like, with many of the policies she has tried to bring in. And we have to, somebody challenged me a few months ago when we talk about green jobs. Is that a good term? Somebody from Germany who said to me, in my region, which is a heavily industrialized part of Germany, we now have a big wind industry, and the wind industry is creating, I can't remember how many jobs in the steel industry and in supply streams. Are they green jobs or brown jobs? What kind of jobs are there? And in a way, maybe that's our lesson if we come from sustainability, not to talk about green jobs. They are just jobs. And for the future, we know that many of those jobs will come from adapting to climate change, adapting to making all our industry, our farming, our cities more sustainable for the future. I mean, we've just been talking about the energy crisis in Europe. Nobody knows what's going to happen as a result of the Ukraine crisis, what that will mean for energy prices. Having our own energy supplies, but also making sure they are sustainable energy, is going to be a very important issue. And I know Peter Viz will talk to you tomorrow about the European Summit this week and the new targets for climate change. So I won't talk about those, but just to say it's a very, very important week in the European Union. And there's many things that can be done. I'm glad to see that you're linking your programmes with the mainstream regional policies, because there are many aspects where we could do more. Housing stock. We know that energy efficiency is absolutely crucial. We have pushed that as MEPs, and we want to see more regional approaches to tackling energy efficiency in housing in particular, and that's also a job creator for many local communities. And we actually changed the rules in the last period to allow structural funds to be spent on energy efficiency. So, and then there are many other kinds of sustainable projects, because adapting to climate change is going to be a very important part of the working years to come. And finally, just to say, what is important for projects like yours is to keep the decision makers informed about them. I'm very pleased that we have people from South Yorkshire Forest here today, my constituency. The people who are deciding where the money should go in these programmes need to know how the money's been spent, because otherwise they won't defend it when the going gets tough. So please make sure the MEPs from your regions are informed about what you do. Invite them to visit your projects. I'm sure they'll be interested to learn what you're doing. Invite your local councillors as well, and ministers from your government. Make sure that the people on the ground know that the kind of work you're doing is important. It isn't just a luxury add-on with you travelling off to visit things. It's having a real impact on the ground, and I think that's a very important message for the future.
Thanks very much. Mr. De Bruyn, would you add something to what you have already said? If not, okay.
Thanks, Chair. Well, thanks to the organizers to allowing Purple to be here in the panel. It's interesting maybe for you to know that the Purple network was created almost 10 years ago following an Interreg project of the Interreg Northwest Europe zone. It was about sustainable open spaces, and I think many of the issues that has been mentioned this morning were part of the reflection of this Sustainable Open Spaces Consortium 10 years ago. So today the Purple network represents 15 regions all over Europe, but 10 of the members are coming from the Northwest zone. So it's very important for us to to follow what will be the key priorities of the next programming period. And I think, we are, it's not a surprise for you, but Purple stands for Peri-Urban Regions Platform Europe. And for us, our key interest is to bring at the European level the fact that it's not possible anymore to talk only of rural areas and urban areas. And nowadays, on many European territories, mainly situated in Northwest Europe, there are already many peri-urban territories. And I think it's not easy for us to explain people in the Commission that it's not enough to think about urban-rural links, but we need to go beyond these linkages, because these linkages already exist on many areas. And it has been, I'm quite happy to see that in the short video this morning, the peri-urban area of Bruges has been mentioned. So about our priorities, I think one of the main challenges for the future people who will work in Interreg will be to find a way to reconcile what has been said by Martin earlier today, namely that territorial approach is everywhere, that place-based project will be very important. And at the same time, we will have to take into account what has been said by the director of Interreg, namely that EU 2020 is a framework and we need to concentrate on the specific issues and themes. So I think the main challenge will be to find a way of having and bringing this territorial approach, and this is really true for peri-urban territories, but not while respecting what is asked by the Commission to focus on the certain themes. And it might be a bit paradoxical at the same way to say, okay, we need place-based solution and place-based innovation, and at the same time asking everybody really to focus on the short and thin numbers of thematic. So I think it will be challenging, but I think it will be the only way to find solutions and to be innovative. And I think the innovation has been said this morning several times. And I think for peri-urban regions, this is really what we try to do, because thinking only of urban areas or of rural areas is not a way of finding solutions for our territory. So that's all for me for today, but happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much. Meneer Kooijman.
Good afternoon. I might start, I might give a little bit a different story than the other speakers, I'm afraid, because I'm working in the creative and cultural industries, and I'm working with lots of local projects in different cities. So my perspective might be built from the local experience. And of course, if we take a look at the moment at the discussions, we all discuss the situation of economic crisis, the lack of funding, the difficulties to get money. And you have the pessimist. Can you? Okay, okay, I'm here. There are, of course, the pessimists who say it's very hard to get funding. There's poverty, there's unemployment. It's very difficult to get projects going off the ground. And at the same time, you have the cultural optimists who tell you we have more and more international exchange, more mobility, we have higher and better education. There is a growth in every social and cultural level that you can think of. Of course, the reality is in between. What I see happening at the local front in the cities itself is a change, of course, from the industrial society to the knowledge society. It means that we have large areas that are abandoned, but at the same time, locally, there are many, many very small, often very small initiatives that try to get new ideas, innovative ideas from the ground in order to create a vibrant urban environment. And what these local initiatives are looking for is cooperative activities, in possibilities to create networks in order to work together on a longer period, because the dynamics, of course, is very, very high in these different local projects. So if we talk about the prospects for the upcoming years, we will have to be creating networks. That could be, of course, real networks on a local level, but at the same time we need international exchange and international networks, either new media or the ordinary normal way of exchanging information and initiatives. And if I take a look at what is happening at the moment at the European level, it's not that desperate at all. If I'm well informed, the Creative Europe budget has increased. I haven't taken the inflation into account, but it's 9% higher, I understand. The ERDF is hiring its percentage discussing hiring as percentage that is going to go to the local level. We have, of course, the other funds. The Erasmus Plus is increased. We have a lot of support for the small and medium enterprises. And if I talk about creative industries, I talk about very, very small initiatives. So in general, if I take a look from the local level to what is happening in Europe, is not that desperate at all. I leave it to this for the moment. I'll defend myself.
Thank you very much. I gather that some questions have been prepared by people who are here. And is there a Mr. called Bootman? Yes, you are the first one to ask a question.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm a planner, and I'm working within Interact projects, I guess, for 10 years now. So it's going to be the fourth period, or third or fourth period, the coming Interact period. My experience together with the partners is that we have learned a lot. We have made experiences and we gain knowledge for the years, and this knowledge has influenced our work locally or in the region massively. When all the presentations were that there will be a change more to concrete results, that what was said, or joint development. And we are fearing that the exchange of experience, or the exchange of knowledge, the pure exchange of knowledge, may got lost within this process. And the question if this is not a failure.
Who is going to answer this question? So exchange of knowledge, learning from each other, and not just putting up concrete projects. That's how I understand your question. Monsieur Simon.
Well, I think it's not completely new. I think it's not the first time the Commission and the Interreg Secretariat is asking for more result-oriented projects. What I can say is sometimes the fact project is positive for the one who are managing it and who are working in it is a way also of some people, when there is not clear results, they say, oh yeah, but it has been successful because we learned a lot. And I think it is really true for the people who were part of the project. But maybe for the Commission and the one who are financing the project, maybe it's not enough for them to say, okay, but is it necessary to spend EU money, public money, just for you to learn? And if I take the example of Purple, we had this Sustainable Open Space 2 project, and then we didn't have any more funds from European Union. The regions together decided to keep making this exchange of information, exchange of experience, exchange of best practice within themselves without extra money. And I think it's a real added value because the network is alive since 10 years and we are still learning a lot together, exchanging information. So I really see your point. I think anyone participating to an Interact project learned a lot, but I also understand why the Commission is asking a bit more in order that the results of the project are shared not only within but also outside. So I think it's not, the Commission is not asking to stop any exchange of information, but maybe they want the result to be more shared outside the project partners.
Has that answered your question? No, you can come back if you want to.
Just a comment. To me, the Interreg program is it was in the past, and it is still a program which creates innovativeness by itself, by working together. And that is a clear difference between the big investment programs, which bring money to, which bring European money to invest in infrastructure and other things. And this is a clear difference, and that is a capital of Interreg.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you want to add something, Mr. De Bruin?
I can add something in the sense that it is not at all the idea that the exchange of experience and gaining knowledge should be lost. That should still be a crucial factor of Interreg. The point is that it should perhaps be more than only that. I think that depends also a bit on the budgets that can go to certain projects. If you have a budget for 20 or 30 million euros, it is not only about exchanging knowledge, visiting each other, but you have the budget also to do something together. The idea is not to do not have that exchange of experience, but try to add something to it. The whole point of result orientation is, of course, that with money is spent, you should also be more and more able to tell what you did with it and to what purpose that served. And I know that might be a little bit more difficult for Interreg programs than it might be for other mainstream programs. I've seen this discussion also for URBACT, actually, Interreg, the C strand or the interregional strand, where the budgets are even smaller, and where really this learning is the crucial element. But even there, we ask the program authorities to really reflect on what are the results that they want to expect. And very often we see that actually perhaps they did not really reflect on it at all, but if they did so, they do come up with possible results and more concrete results which could focus the actions they take. So it's still crucial, but we'd like to see something on top of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, please.
As someone who's been, I'm Andy Bleeden from Stockport Council in the UK. As someone who's also been involved with Interreg projects for many years, I share your concerns in terms of what seem to be new outputs. But what experience has taught us with the Interreg projects we've been involved with is very much we concentrate on what, whether it's the learning or the day job behind our project. And sometimes it's very easy without outside assistance, and I use that word lightly, I mean help from the JTS, but it's very easy to forget that there are other things or other impacts of your project. And certainly, I mean, we learned just now about green infrastructure projects. Green infrastructure projects can produce lots of learning. Obviously, green infrastructure, they can produce low carbon savings, they can produce jobs. Depends on who looks at that project. Certainly within a public authority, they'll see different results. And certainly I know with working closely with the JTS, we've had some very successful programs within North West Europe programs, such as the Citizen in Balance program, which there are old partners here, that it took some time, even after the project, to draw out what some of the final results of that project are, because we were only ever interested with the Citizen Balance project, with the senior networks. We didn't think about the jobs or the long-term mainstreaming that would come afterwards until after after the program finished, which is sometimes where we need help, perhaps, or a little bit of a push, if I'm being not too impolite, from our funders.
Thank you very much. I would like to go to a second question from Collaborate. I have a bit of a problem with the pronunciation. I hope I pronounced it right. Sean de Butler? Yes, please.
Good afternoon. The 2020 agenda calls for smart, sustainable and inclusive growth. The proposals for the Interreg 5 North West European programme focus on the three priorities of innovation, low carbon and protection of the environment. The question is, what happened to inclusivity and its links with jobs and EU cohesion?
So we forget, let's say, the social bit.
Yes, the social elements, yes.
Mm.
Yeah, the Commission has to answer. Sorry, not for anybody else.
We always look at the Commission.
Perhaps it's more up to me to decide, because this is a specific decision of the member states united in Northwest Europe. it's not a decision of the Commission. It's not a decision. It's basically the member states in the Northwest Europe program have decided, first of all, not to use the opportunity to have 4 thematic objectives. That was one. They wanted to have even more focus than the, let's say, minimal focus that the Commission wanted. So we have only 3 thematic objectives instead of the opportunity of having 4. And then there were inclusions of inclusiveness, if you can say that, in the specific types of actions and in the specific objectives. For instance, in the innovation priority, we're definitely looking for social enterprises and these kind of the inclusion in the economy of the population. But also in the energy one, I think there's definitely the idea to do something about energy poverty. There are specific inclusions of inclusion somewhere in the specific objectives, not as a generic theme, but as something in the 3 themes. It's a bit more, and the idea was that would focus much more than when you do generic inclusion. That was the whole idea.
Do you want to come back?
Yeah, no, it was just particularly that it was mentioned earlier on at the very outset that now more and more people are starting to look and see benefits from Europe, and it's vital, I think, that there is inclusiveness in the likes of the Interreg projects to ensure that benefits from Europe is seen at a very much lower, at a grassroots level throughout the European Commission. And I think the opportunity to integrate and work with partners in other project areas as well is vital in terms of building up that inclusiveness and that feeling of you know, European citizenship and the opportunities to learn and see the benefits of Europe.
If it's not in the paper, you are now in the role to write or to have the draft of the operational program. You mentioned that there is a kind of communication in the coming month, and I think to underline that it is meant that social integration, so fighting against poverty, etc., is part of this priority, has to be sent out by the Commission. So I would expect that this integrated understanding will be announced by the Commission. Then those who are looking to the later papers understand, okay, it's not a 4th extra priority, but it's welcomed. And from the local level, Europe that works for integration, Europe that fights against local poverty is very, very important to support the European idea. If you just are saying we are carbon and we are innovation and we are high tech, then people stay back from Europe. So I think the social question is on the European policy way very important in the real life.
Just on that, I do actually see a lot of potential opportunities there for the job creation, etc., through the likes of the low carbon and the potential alternative secure energy sources, particularly for the more rural areas of the Northwest European region. I mean, there are an awful lot of assets there, and I think those assets can be utilised very beneficially by the local communities in those regions to actually develop themselves and become long-term sustainable communities in the more outlying areas of Northwest Europe.
I can switch to my 3rd question, and that will be put by Evelien Huigen. Yes, please.
I've heard that territorial programs need to link more to other EU-funded programs. These different programs are in different stages of preparation. So how is this now being currently put forward to integrate the different programs and projects? I also heard this for the current programming period, that this should be done, but in my experience it was difficult to reach. So are there now for this, well, for the future program, are there concrete things that help this forward? Is there being thought of how to do this?
We of course look at the Commission.
It's always a bit the bad part of being in a panel. As I already presented in my presentation, there is now actually the tool of integrated territorial investments, which make it possible to, from the outset, try to combine several ACIF funds. So, for example, ERDF, ESF, and also the Interreg programs, which are funded by ERDF. So that is something that has been put into place and can be used. And for the moment, we see that there indeed are some interest of using these tools, either in cross-border cooperation, for example, border cities, which have been working together for quite a while. They actually developed already an integrated cross-border strategy, so they could use this tool now. We also see it being discussed in, for example, the Danube strategy. So it could also be used on a larger scale, on a macro-regional area. But I think it goes even further than that and can also be done in a different way, perhaps, just by reflecting on it and by being aware that there are other possibilities. It also links a little bit to the question on social inclusion. It's true, from the Commission we ask programs to focus. And so also in Northwest Europe, focus on things which are really taking place on this Northwest European scale. It will, on one hand, social inclusion will sort of as a transversal theme be probably included. But it also does not mean that there will be no social inclusion in North Rhine-Westphalia, for example, because by far the biggest funding sources are not the transnational cooperation program, but are just the ERDF and ESF programs, who will no doubt also focus on social inclusion. So that is also a bit the thing about try to focus on really what is the potential and the needs of the program. I already drifted off a little bit, I think. There are other union instruments as well, like mentioned already, like Horizon 2020 for research. So that not necessarily needs to be combined in an integrated territorial investment, but I think you should have it in mind in your sort of your project life cycle. Will certain research be able to be funded by Horizon 2020? Or will, after your project has yielded results, perhaps even in a last period, can it be sort of mainstreamed and used also for funding from now mainstream programs? So we get the impression that even a transnational or cooperation programs sometimes also think in an island way, and what we really try to stimulate is that people look beyond this and really look at all possibilities that are out there and try to combine as much as possible.
Mr. Schwarze and then Mr. Lauwers, and I'll come back to...
What was just a reaction to you?
The EO had set three priorities, and they all agreed with European 2020. So the task is to cooperate in all fields. I think the beginning speaker said he's going out to a meeting with the DG economy for how to cooperate regional things with new structural policies and economic things. So the cooperation between the DGs, with the general directions, is a very good thing to bring things together. At the same time, how the regions themselves can set out this. For example, North Rhine-Westphalia has made a decision that there should be a cross-sectoral, cross-ministerial reporting to the governor every year how things are fitting together. And this is again a possibility to practically cooperate within the operational programs.
Thank you. I would also basically support that and would bring in basically there are many let's say bottom-up developments trying to get the results of projects together. And for instance, in our program, we have one of the examples is here, the APACHES cluster, to bring together 8 projects which are on similar topics. So that's something which basically the 8 projects together decided to come together. We have another cluster which is bringing those 8 are all only Northwest European projects. We have another cluster which was sort of a pilot for us too, which included 8 programs. So a few cross-border programs, a few transnational programs, and a few projects from the C program. So basically, this is an experiment. We know that on European level there has been an attempt by Interact to create a database of all the projects, but you must realize that if you add only the Interact projects, you're coming up to something between 15,000 and 20,000 projects in the whole of Europe. So this is a huge work. Just only to bring together these projects on keywords. That only is what has happened. And many projects are in different languages because cross-border programs don't work in English. So there is a huge complexity there. But still, there are attempts going on. This KEEP database, it's online. You can find many of the projects back there. But indeed, also, each and every region or country is doing similar things. They're bringing together the results of from the different strands of subsidy and trying to then enhance the results. It is a huge effort. It's a huge work, but I think there is a lot of effort done to create this. Thanks.
I just wanted to react quickly to what has been said because, well, I don't want to be too negative, but because the idea of integrating projects, finance on the ground, it's an obvious one. I think it would be, on paper, it seems very evident we need to do it. But on the ground, believe me, it's very, very difficult because it's not always the same people who are managing the EFRD, the ESF, the Agricultural Fund, the Horizon 2020 program. So when you are a project, an organization or someone who wants to try to do what is asked by the Commission, mainly to gather different funding, different source of money to build your own projects, it's a nightmare, really. And I'm really wondering how people will manage to do it concretely, because, you know, it's not only DG Regio, you know, DG Environment with a live integrated project also push for this. Horizon 2020 also say you need to aggregate several funding, and it's always interesting for people to know that you can do different things with different funds. But when you have to build a project with precise information on budget, actions, partners, and to gather and to write your proposal with different deadlines, with different people to talk with, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but on the ground, I'm really wondering how it will happen concretely. So I think the idea is great, and it has been said this morning, let's work more horizontally and less vertically. But we are faced to organizations at the national, regional level that are still working on a vertical ways. And even the Commission, we know it quite well with Purple, because we are explaining since ages that you cannot say, okay, rural issues are dealt by DG Agri and urban issues by DG Regio, because there's many territories where it's already mixed, and every DG try to say, okay, we understand what you say, but it's not really our core business, so let's go to another DG, and it's a never-ending story. So I think integration is a good objective, but it will be very difficult to achieve on the ground.
I think I agree very much with my neighbor, because if you take a look from the bottom up, what you would like to realize, there are different timescales. There are different actors involved. There are different priorities. You all have to combine these different profiles in order to come up with an integrated project. It's very, very difficult to get it done. And at the same time, you want to realize your project, what you're doing on the ground. It's not only about theoretical paperwork. You have to realize the projects that you're working on. So it's very, very difficult to combine these different schemes that we have from the European level, I think.
But then I have an additional question, because in many of its aims, the European Union says we have to go for SMEs, for small and medium companies. Now, if everything is so complicated, if it's so difficult to get into the European machine, how do SMEs cope? Because, Mr. Kooijman, you said, I work with lots of in the creative industry, with lots of very small companies. That's not just a case in creative industries. Also in other industries, small companies try to integrate, collaborate, find partners across borders in different regions and so on. So you said simplification was not your biggest success in bringing things together. How do we solve this? Because for a small company, this is a mountain to climb that most of them don't even start when they look at the mountain.
How did it cope? That was the question.
How can we improve the situation?
Well, it is not easy at all, because, for instance, if you're an SME and you try to get money, you try to get funding, it's very, very hard to get funds from the local banking structure. We know that, of course, the local banks are supported by European structures, and then there's risk management involved that's supposed to support especially investments for SMEs. But at the same time, at the local level, it's very difficult to get to what you want to get. So how do they survive? Well, first of all, I think the first thing is that there are lots of very, very small initiatives working on their own, and at the same time they're creating local cooperative structures in order to get a longer-term survival strategy. You cannot do it on your own. So what we see at the local level is local cooperative initiatives that try to negotiate with the local actors in order to get a certain size, a certain amount of volume going at the local level. That's part of the strategies that we can see.
I think the EU has already mentioned that it is the multi-level governance which is possible as a method to solve different complex problems. And therefore, I think there is no alternative if there are integrated goals that we also have to have integrated practice on the administrative way. And if regions can cooperate, if 20 cities can cooperate, why not 5 GDs or general directors? And that means talk, find solutions, agree about what's possible or what has to be changed, and then change rules. And I think the EU administration is all the time learning that and doing it. So I think it's not a thing to say, oh, it's too complicated, there will be no result. I believe you will go that direction, you're ordered to do so, and you're able to do so. So I think integrated solutions are asked in the next 7 years, and things will come together, and the rules will change. It's not a situation that we just have only in 2013, the last time to talk about the rules of the game, and we'll see us in 2020 again to find the better ones. It will be the way to run these things in the next years, and therefore I think the separate parts of the EU administration are challenged for cooperation.
Okay, thank you. Just to add something on a very practical and perhaps on a bit positive note, to solve the solution for SMEs, we have found, at least projects of Northwest Europe and other programs too, have found solutions like, for instance, having a project built up by regional authorities or chambers of commerce or bigger institutions like that. And these institutions setting up a scheme, for instance, for vouchers which have a certain value for SMEs to simply go to a university or to get knowledge somewhere or to exchange. So basically a voucher system, which is a very simple system. They just get a voucher for 5,000 euros or 10,000 euros. They can travel to the place where they have to get the knowledge. They are there for a day and that's it. You know, it's a very simple system. There's not much red tape to that. So basically by building in some sort of an interface which is solving all the administrative burden, the red tape, some of the projects have solved this issue and really involved SMEs. So not as really partners in the project, but as being beneficiaries of the project. And I think that's the most important, that they do something with the money that is there for them.
following on from, sorry, Richard Hill, Colchester Council, UK, following on from the practical positive, point out the practical potential negative in two areas. The first is intellectual property rights. We're increasingly becoming involved in innovation, and we're increasingly, as we have, I mean, I have a history and Interreg projects going back many years as well, but we're increasingly being asked to involve SMEs. Now, SME involvement has been going on since Interreg 3, and the need to have it. But how do we actually protect their property rights? If we're looking to encourage innovation, what safeguards are we putting in place, particularly given some of the requirements of Interreg and publicly available information to actually protect the intellectual property and attract the SMEs to actually go through this route? And my second point is I'm very concerned with regards to doing joint projects, joint initiatives, particularly when we think of issues like double funding and the potential for double funding issues coming up. We've already seen grant freezes because of irregularities or funding errors being imposed from the Commission. And I think that we are looking at a potential problem where we're going to have projects which are very heavy on their financial administration, purely to ensure there aren't errors creeping into the system. And the more integration, as we're calling it, with other funds, I think that the more likelihood we're going to have errors and problems and freezes.
I had a lot of comments. First, of course, the Commission is not perfect, not more or less perfect, probably, than any national or regional administration. But an important thing to realize and to say to you is that it is not that we perhaps will change in the next programming period in 2020. Many things have changed for the programming period that now starts today, actually. There is a far stronger integration of 5 different funds. There is now that tool, integrated territorial investments, which allows to combine all this financing to focus it on integrated strategies. And there are many more things done which should make life easier for beneficiaries. Part of it, of course, will also depend on how that will be managed also by member states, by programs and by regions themselves, because it's all about joint programming. So there are a lot of opportunities. I think it is very important to see now how they will be taken up and how it will work in practice. And I think that will be continuously evaluated. So I think that is a positive message that I can bring, that things have changed. It might still be complicated, but I'd say try it and see if it works what we have put in place. So I think that's it.
Thank you very much. I have a last question, and that should be asked by Mr. Karsten Ruscho. Ah, okay.
Yeah, my question links back to the social, economic and ecological benefits of green infrastructure. So to what we've heard in the discussions or the presentations in the morning. And so the question is, we see in our projects that there are these high benefits, and we heard a lot of it in this morning. And the question is, often have the impression that the more local investment programs, for example, the EODF programs, don't put a high priority on these GI investments, despite their high impact on social, ecological, and economic factors. So they do produce jobs and growth, in a sense. So the question is, are perhaps the Interreg programs, the transnational programs, a way of, let's say, being a multiplier? So is this a kind of unique selling point of the projects to, let's say, create more investment or putting focus on such things? Is this the way this could be done? So is this, Yeah, the setting point of the program, or so is this a way of approaching this gap between, let's say, what we want to have, in a sense, for what we know and what is out there in the funding schemes?
Nobody wants to answer this question. Mr. Schwarz.
I cannot answer it from the perspective of the Commission, but I see what's already announced round about the wording of green infrastructure is not enough to put it on a higher priority. That was my comment, that I say it should be more than just a welcomed wording. If green infrastructure is seriously meant as something that collects several aspects of environmental and integrated strategies, including climate, etc., then you have to very clearly discuss this on a political level. If this is a new headline and which is followed by political programs, actions, investments, etc. If this investment discussion or priority discussion does not happen, then I guess it's more rhetoric, or it stays nice, but it's not relevant perhaps for the European policy. But as far as I've understood the documents, it is announced that it wants to be or shall be a strategy, and I don't know in the moment what's the discussion in the EU administration, but I'm very interested in what's coming out there.
The investments for the next period of cohesion policy should be really focused on the goals of the Europe 2020 strategy, which includes actually smart, sustainable and inclusive growth. So that has been translated into 11 sort of thematic objectives, and several of these objectives are really go in the direction of the sustainable approach. It is even so that we ask concentration from member states, and part of this concentration should also include the low carbon economy. So it's not even an option for member states to not want to do that. It's just a part of what they have to do. It's a little bit less so for green infrastructures that actually falls in another sort of thematic objective. But for example, in the example of the Northwest Europe, if I read it correctly, the environmental objectives is specifically chosen as one of the 3 priorities where investments will be focused. So it can come back in different degrees in different programs, and I actually think that in Northwest Europe it is could be a very important aspect.
Okay, thank you very much. Since we run a little bit late on our time schedule, I would now like to give the floor, and I would first of all like to thank the members of the panel for this discussion and you for your questions and your participation. Mr. Wild, you are a director of South Yorkshire Forest Partnership and, as my paper says, APACHES leader. The floor is yours.
This one. Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. Firstly, I need to give some thanks. And also I need to probably say a little bit more about APACHES, because actually many of you will have heard this over and over again and not really known what is the detail of the cluster. So I'll just quickly whip through some of the let's say, technical and functional aspects of the cluster itself. So APACHES is a network of... sorry, previous slide. It's not going to work with a video, it doesn't matter. It's a network of 7 projects, actually, working across Northwest Europe with 52 partners, cities and regions across Northwest Europe. And we kind of have a shared vision and a shared mission, if you like, to realise the benefits in terms of sustainable jobs and growth of managing and developing attractive public areas. And the cluster itself brings together projects with investments over 500 million euros and 0.5 million for the actual impact of the bringing together itself. What do we mean by attractive public areas? We don't just mean physical places, but it is a very important aspect. And I think we all feel, like with green infrastructure, we feel intuitively that there is this economic benefit from providing this attractive framework, this setting for investment, and as Richard Florida talks about, the place to attract the creative class. If you like, the bright young things that every company needs to attract to succeed in the knowledge economy. We feel this, but to demonstrate it is necessary. It's not enough just to feel that that works. We need to be able to demonstrate how best to do it and transfer those lessons in Europe. We benefit from compact, attractive city centres. We need to make more of those in discussions about the relationship between Europe and other parts of the world. So our aims are really quite simple. Demonstrate how transnational cooperation has made an impact. You should always please your funder, of course. But how has Interreg improved the economic success and viability of the cities and regions? And demonstrate how the public realm, the public spaces do contribute to that, whether they're rural or urban, it doesn't matter. But how they contribute to a competitive, knowledge-based economy. We also need to provide the know-how, the evidence and the tools, not just for each other that are the, let's say, well-advanced regions with the capacity, but also for the ones that need to be helped up. So not raising the bar, but bringing everyone up to the same level, if possible. And finally, like today, helping to set the priorities for the future funding by identifying shared challenges and opportunities. So these are the projects. Lively Cities on placemaking, Manage Plus project on managing regeneration initiatives in the long term, Collaborate project, I've given an example there of the multiple partners involved. This is about clustering and best practice. The Value Added project and value projects on green infrastructure, but also involving local champions. We call them local EU champions, so that people see more directly the benefits of investing in Europe and Europe's investment in places, what has been called the Europe of places. The Portico project, telling the stories of cultural heritage, the Cure project on creative urban renewal, and the Mandy project on managing district centres. And really, I suppose the story here is the rapid growth in the networks. We started working the summer, autumn of 2012, and very quickly you see we're all already a bit squashed because there's more people trying to get in the picture, and that's a good thing, and that's exactly what we want. And I hope we'll get some pictures today with a much broader network still. And this is how we achieve the impact. And more than anything, for me, Apaches is about helping our cities and regions get the big picture. And I think it's a real foresight of the Interreg programme to invest in a different way of working. It stems back to a discussion in 2007, where if you're a newcomer to these programmes, you don't really want the level of detail. If you're a big decision maker, you want to know what are the range of tools that help me deliver integrated urban development, integrated approaches to spatial planning and a successful city region. We always neglect the big picture and the context, and that's dangerous. How do we do it in Apaches? Firstly, telling the stories, what did we achieve through our projects? And it is much more about demonstrating that and having impact beyond our projects. Secondly, jointly assessing, how well did we do? Let's be honest with ourselves. Let's look through a peer review process. How could we do it differently? How can we apply those lessons in 5B? Bringing it together and planning for what comes next. And this is really the lunch, okay? As we've all been developing our national frameworks for European funding, what we find is this moving target. You already missed it. Some of you maybe noticed it. as we look to build the blocks for cooperation moving forwards, we've been doing this at a time when the operational programmes have been developed and things have changed. Things have come in, other things have fallen out. And what we would say is that bottom up and top down alone will miss the target, but together working. So it's not that I'm a fan of The Who, although they are quite good. How can we do it? Learning on the lessons of previous practices, good innovations. Please go to our website, because for the first time we have a collection of different kinds of innovations from across different projects. We've structured them according to some themes: urban spaces, virtual networks, countryside. These are different ways of coming to the learning and the lessons and having a strategic impact. We promised to say something about emerging lessons, and I hope this will be useful to you, and it will be on the web stream and other information. How did we do some of the work we're doing? We looked at the logic intervention, the intervention for logic, for how do we move from the 4B priorities, including public spaces, built assets, heritage and so on, to the 5B themes of sustainable jobs and growth. And we looked at mapping these chains. So for instance here, the district centres for the Mandy project. What we find is that if you are interested in growth in commercial centres, it is intrinsically and extrinsically linked with quality of life, with families, and we can look at these key nodes that join things together. What we found, if you're interested in these kinds of projects and you don't yet see a place for yourself, but you have a key stake in public realm, urban sustainability, placemaking, look at these themes, because they will help you link between 4B to 5B. Topics like privatisation of spaces, reuse of buildings, health and well-being, families, urban density, questions of social cohesion, valuation and promotion of the value benefits, demonstrating the jobs and growth benefits of our actions, selling goods and services. We heard about ecosystem goods and services. It's a phrase that puts people off, but it's, if you get the point, timber, of course it's valuable. And we can build those economic benefits into a range of projects. So I'm hopeful that those are important themes. It's not just about the topics and the technical issues, though. Probably more than anything, this is about talking to people and having fun. And as we move towards the lunch, I want to sort of prompt for you to talk to each other about why are we still in it? Why do we still do this when there's so many challenges and so many reasons to go back to the day job? So maybe have that chat about your proudest EU moment, because I still am a big fan of the importance of the European Union and the broader, deeper European projects. And I think this is the basis to develop the building blocks for future cooperation. I asked a colleague who couldn't come today, someone from Lewisham, if you were coming today, what would you want to achieve? And he said, I want to feel to be part of something, a movement, to contribute. So I'm not going to eat into lunch anymore, other than to just say a few thank yous. And I believe, Frank, you have some ways of formalising the thank yous, but I'd like to just name a few people, if it's okay. And perhaps we can have some applause. So, firstly, the speakers and the panellists, if we can have a round of applause for them, please. Secondly, really critically, for our moderator, for Dirk Sturks, he's done a really fantastic, excellent job, and a difficult one, so thank you very much. So the Committee of Regions, which did an excellent job in securing us a venue, and particularly to our speaker, Luc van der Brand. Thank you very much. And on to keeping the funder happy, never bite the hand that feeds, as we say in England. We're very, very happy with our work on the cluster and very grateful to the support from the North West Europe Interreg programme. Thank you. And finally, I wanted to close with just some thanks to the organisers, because I've been doing some work on customer-centric journeys, which is awful jargon. But some of the lessons that come out are about delighting your customers. Yeah? Whatever you do, you have customers. And I have personally have been delighted by the people that have worked with us and for us on this programme. For instance, in organising a web stream. For instance, in securing such high-level speakers. So if we can end with really thanks for all of them. Ariane, Frank, Christian, as I said, the hosts, and also Amel for putting together the video in a short period of time. Thank you all so much. I think it's lunchtime.
It's amazing how many people are involved. No, you're welcome. It's interesting to see several projects doing things together.
We have our discussion.
Well, I should go and say thank you to all the speakers, but maybe that'll be a lunch as well.
I definitely did that. Okay. Yeah, it's just, you know, it looks good on paper. We're trying ourselves a little bit try to practice ITR. Just impossible.